And what's going on, guys? And welcome to the Benches Cleared podcast, where we cover the best rivalry in all of sports. And this is my lovely co-host, the voluptuous crybaby Tyler Coe. He represents the Los Angeles Dodgers.
And on the other side of the table, we have the biggest bandwagoner bitch in all of sports, Jesse Gutierrez, representing the San Francisco Giants. A San Francisco Giants fan since 2010, believe it or not.
2010, yeah, that's exactly right. All the pictures I have are just forged, and that's
Photoshop is pretty incredible.
It's a great thing.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug.
It makes you look credible.
So we're actually gonna have. We can just go on all day, okay? I have to stop you at some point. We are gonna get into some draft talk today, guys. The draft is tomorrow. Obviously, we've been talking about it for a couple weeks, at least mentioning it, the different issues and everything. But we want to get into the specific teams our teams are going to pick, and we're going to do it with people that know a lot more about it than we do, and are actually going to give us real information and just not talk shit to each other all day. All right, and we welcome our first guest to talk about the Giants side of the draft, our friend Roger Munter. You might have seen him or heard of him as a writer for McCovey Chronicles, as well as he has a website, rogermunter.substack.com, or you can just follow him on Twitter at Roger60Run. Roger, how's it going, my man?
It's doing really well. How's it out there on the West Coast tonight?
Good now. Yeah.
It's pretty hot.
Hot. No more lockdowns right now. We're doing pretty solid week right now.
There you go.
That's awesome. So we wanted to ask you, I know you do a lot of work on the draft, and we wanted to see maybe what you might be hearing or what you're feeling. What do you think the Giants are going at pick 31? I mean, not 31, sorry, 13.
At 13, yeah. It's pretty interesting because there's not a long history of this group together. Farhan Zaidi's been there. This is his second year. Michael Holmes came on just before last year. We're from the A's. Brian Bridges, who was with the Braves for many, many, many years, is now their national cross director. So you don't have a long history to tell exactly what their tendencies are. Okay. What I think they are doing is moving the department more towards sort of analytic models where they listen to their scouts, but they also are modeling data much more than past regimes are. I think they're going to be fairly agnostic as to whether they're going for a college hitter, a college pitcher. I think they're going to let the person who's at the top of the board fall to them. Okay. That said, this is a really pitching strong draft, which means that either, there's a chance to fortify their system, which isn't, really deep in arms, with some big time arms, or the other approach to that is the draft is so deep in pitchers that if you can go for a bat at the top and know that there's going to be depth waiting for you at your later picks, and they have 7 picks in this 5-round draft because of Will Smith and Madison Bumgarner comp picks. I'm kind of split on that. You hear a lot of connection between them and Tyler Soderstrom of Turlock, California, who is listed as a catcher, although really he's a left-handed hitter who currently catches, who you can see being a third baseman maybe down the line, or a left fielder, maybe even a second baseman. Really, these days with shifts, there's not that much difference between third base and second base. He's going to be something. He may be flexible. He may be a catcher and everything. There's a lot of smoke connecting them to Soderstrom, who also would be the first time in history that a father and son both went in the first round to the same team because they selected his father out of Fresno State many years ago. So there's a lot of connection there. I still kind of think that Garrett Crochet, the left-hander out of the University of Tennessee, who has some of the biggest and nastiest stuff in the draft, but who didn't pitch much this spring because he was being bothered by shoulder soreness. He's a left-hander who hits 100, who's got a really, really nasty curveball, who shows out well in the data, in the TrackMan data. I think there's a chance that he's the guy they're going to pop, but Soderstrom has been connected to them all along. Between those two, I think there's a heavy chance that one of the two might end up being their pick. There are a lot of other guys they like. You hear them connected to some of the high school arms, but those are the two that I'm kind of looking at as possibilities for him.
I've heard that too as well. The Soderstrom thing too is kind of interesting. They're saying like he can catch, but he probably won't stay there. Is it kind of maybe even, I know this might sound weird, but like, what about him being like a backup catcher slash backup third baseman slash like almost like a utility guy that can catch.
Right, which is something Farhan Zaidi loves. I mean,
Yeah,
you
the
got Will
Austin
Smith
Barnes,
with
did
Austin
that for a bit.
Barnes. Zaidi has talked a lot about positional flexibility, about not wanting guys who are just one position. I think he would love a guy who's a third baseman who catches on certain days against tough right-handed pitchers. Absolutely.
And don't give me the arms, Tyler. Smug little.
No.
Hey, yeah, CT.
That was smug right there. That was like, yeah, that's right.
I was saying Austin Barnes and Kyle Farmer before we shipped him off to Cincinnati.
That's true. Kyle Farmer too.
He was playing more third base because at one time we were carrying 3 catchers because 2 of them can play 3 positions in the infield.
Yeah, if they could play a couple positions, it's always. I mean, that's just so crazy. I mean, I know that's where like baseball's going nowadays, but to have a backup catcher that's like good, so you put him at like somewhere else than first is pretty groundbreaking, pretty crazy. I feel like it's still very new, even though it's been done like maybe once or twice before. But it's pretty interesting. Going
way back, you had Russell Martin too, right? He was a third baseman who switched to catcher really late in his development.
And he's a great shortstop too. For as big as he is, I mean, that guy can move.
Just like Buster Posey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good to know what's coming up, but we hear a lot about the system and how it's doing really well right now on the last couple Bobby Evans and Sabian picks, and where Farhan's taking it. You hear about the Joey Barts, you hear about the Marco Lucianos of the world, you hear about Hunter Bishop. Is there someone that you think that that like the normal Giants fan might not have heard of, like like the Sean Robies or like the Alexander Canarios, like those type of guys? Like, who do you think is going to be an actual impact player that people aren't talking about?
Well, I am a big fan of Alex Canario. The first time I ever went to see Elliot Ramos take batting practice, Canario was in the same group with him and completely stole the show.
Really?
But he's a real boomer bust guy because he has probably after Luciano the best bat speed in the system. And hits the ball loud and a long way away when he makes contact, but he's got serious swing and miss issues. So he's a boomer bust guy. I think the guy who's really going to pop next is Louis Matos, who was part of the same international class with Luciano, which was a big class for them. He's a center fielder.
Fuck me.
Louis Toribio, who you may be thinking about, is currently a third baseman. He's another guy I like a lot. But Matos, they gave not quite $1 million to in that class. He's a center fielder who, they have a lot of guys playing center field right now. He's probably going to stick there. Really good feel for hit and more power than you would think out of his size. He's not one of these guys who's, like the body beautiful Julio Rodriguez type. He's shorter, but he's very athletic, very good feel for hitting. Will probably stick in center and has developing power. That's a guy who I think, if you look and say who else might be a top 100 type down the line, I think is Matos. And Toribio, who you mentioned, the third baseman, is kind of a perfect Zaidi guy because he's a real understand the strike zone, very disciplined hitter who will grow into power. I like both of those guys.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of guys, that, you just have to see if they translate. They tear it up in minor league baseball, and we'll see what happens. I think a lot of us are a little torn and a little skeptical, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a brave new world with development, with all of the labs that the guys go to in the wintertime.
It's a whole different
power,
like, setup.
It's hard to read power anymore. Yeah, so you just wait and see what steps they take.
All right, well, thank you so much for the quick little interview and a little bit of your time, Roger. We really appreciate it. Anything you want to plug before you bounce?
I'm super happy to join you guys. Glad to be here. I am tomorrow morning on my Substack going to announce exactly what the Giants are going to do with their 13th pick. So, absolute 100% guarantee I will deliver their pick tomorrow morning.
All right, sounds really good.
And now we have our good friend Justin Lorber, future Dodgers. Here we're going to talk about the draft and talk about the organization, pipeline, the health, what that's looking like. But Justin, first of all, with tomorrow, the draft is coming. What do you think the Dodgers are going to do at 29? What do you think we're looking at as far as a position and who those potential picks could be?
So I think he's going to be best player available. That's the track record they have over the past 5 years since the new front office took over. If there's a guy who falls who maybe should have been top 20, top 15, maybe fell due to one big concern like an injury or something else, they could go after him. We've seen them do that a couple of times with Walker Buehler, and people were concerned about potential injury there. He had Tommy John surgery right after the draft, ended up turning out okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years later, Jaron Kendall, people were concerned about the swing and miss. He had a lot of strikeouts, and that has continued throughout his minor league career. So we've seen them willing to take a risk on a guy with a lot of talent, but maybe one big question mark. And if there's a guy like that on the board, that might be a guy they would go after.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot, and everything I've been seeing, I kind of agree with you that it seems like the front office the last few years has gone best player available. But from what I've seen in every kind of mock draft, it's just been right-handed pitchers. Every single pick that I've seen has been a right-handed pitcher. And now it seems like they're targeting Chris McMahon from Miami. I don't necessarily think they're targeting them, but I think they're going to go best right-handed pitcher available potentially. But that's just what I've seen. I don't know if you've seen any kind of mock drafts, but from what I've been reading, it's just right-handed pitcher like clockwork every single time.
Yeah, well, the reason you're seeing that is because this is a very, very deep college pitching class, and specifically in the Dodgers range, in that 25 to, say, 40 range. That's where a lot of college and specifically right-handed pitchers are set to go. Bryce Jarvis from Duke, you mentioned Chris McMahon from Miami, his teammates, Slade Ciccone, CJ Van Eyck,
Mm-hmm.
Cole Wilcox, maybe if he falls. There's just a ton of dudes in this class, a ton of good pitching. And it's great if you're a team picking early in the draft and you got an early second round pick, because you can get one of these top hitters and then you can get a really good college arm in the early second.
Those are some baseball names, man.
Smitty something.
Smitty what?
Smitty Werben Jaegerman Jensen.
CJ Van Eyck. That's just
Van Eyck, yeah,
that's a baseball name.
Like, I felt like
That's my
dude.
dude.
I literally, if someone put a gun to my head and was like, hey, say exactly what Justin just said, I couldn't do that. But I felt like every name that you said was just super, just dripped a baseball name.
I mean,
the drip is real.
There's also Clayton Beater from Texas Tech.
Drip,
I mean,
drip.
That's a great name. Imagine, if Kershaw can stick around for a couple more years, have two Claytons, got Beater and Kershaw, two Texas boys.
Beater's fantastic. I'm not sure if he will end up getting to 29. He's got some late buzz on him, maybe in the early 20s. His pitch metrics have been really, really good. One of the higher spin curveballs in the draft, if not the highest spin curveball in the draft. Fastball pairs really well with it. And another year removed from Tommy John surgery, he took a step forward in his command, which is definitely something that scouts are going to want to see. And he did that while moving from the bullpen to the rotation, which is another positive for him.
Yeah, and I mean, like you were saying, it's so deep with college pitchers. I mean, my personal opinion is they can't do wrong. Pretty much whoever they're going to take, I mean, it should be, in theory right now, it's going to be a success. It's going to be a win.
It might be a toss-up, too, because, I mean, they haven't been, like, the mock drafts and stuff always change by, the seasons and stuff, and there hasn't been a season, so it might be a little bit more of a toss-up, too.
Yeah, this is a really hard draft to figure out where guys are going, because typically, you're going to see scouts, you're going to see execs at these kids' games, and you've got none of that. It's all virtual. And so one of the big ways that teams have been able to kind of gauge where other teams are on certain guys has been eliminated. And so there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of question marks about certain players, guys who had a hot start. How early do they go? Because if there's a team that got in and got a good look at them early, they might say, okay, we're comfortable taking this guy in the first round. Whereas other teams who haven't seen a guy since maybe last year or last summer might not be as comfortable doing so. So this will be a very interesting draft, certainly like nothing we've ever seen before, and probably like nothing we'll ever see again.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, yeah, it seems like there's a lot of room for, boom or bust kind of things, just because you have eliminated that one option as far as scouting these players and them not being able to play games. So you could lose really bad. You could win big. I mean, it's just kind of, I think Jesse's right. It's kind of a toss-up at this point. But
I'm going to use that as a soundbite. Oh, my gosh, just repeat.
Yeah.
I think Jesse's right. I think Jesse's that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it happens once in a while. But that kind of brings us to our next point is no matter what we do, I mean, our farm system, the depth is so strong, and our farm system is just so strong, and you don't know what that's like, do you, Jesse?
The depth is so strong. That's like a fable right there.
What do you think? Let's say there is going to be a season, because we're hoping that's going to happen. Who do you see coming out of the minors this year that could make an impact that we don't think will already be coming up? Who would be like a surprise minor leaguer that you're going to see come up?
So I'll exclude guys like Gavin Lux, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin. They've already made their major league debuts. We expect them to make an impact. Even someone like Josiah Gray, who, if you're talking 50-man rosters with a taxi squad, he's a guy that I think people will expect to potentially make an impact. But the guy I will say is Zach McKinstry. He had a big breakout last year. He's a former 33rd round pick. He was added to the 40-man roster in the offseason, which, tells you a lot of what they think about him, because they wanted to protect him over other guys who you could argue had higher profiles from being selected in the Rule 5 draft. He did really well in what we saw in spring training, very little. And he can play a lot of positions. He can play short, he can play second, he can play outfield. So especially if there are injuries, he's a guy who we could see come up and make an impact.
Yeah, he had a really hot spring. I remember, watching spring training and really not knowing who he was, but he was definitely a surprise player. And adding him to the 40 before the season, never started, I mean, that's pretty big. The one thing that I really want to touch on as far as, outside the minor league stuff is, like I said before I asked you a question, if there's a season, I just want your opinion. Do you think there will be a season, whether it be 40 games, 50 games, 70 games, whatever it may be? Do you think we will have Major League Baseball in 2020?
I don't know. I hope so. It's unfortunate what we're seeing in these negotiations where news actually just came out right before we started recording that the players made an amended offer. They lowered the amount of games that they wanted to play. It's a step in the right direction, but ultimately the owners are going to have to meet them halfway. They've restructured how they're offering salaries and payments to the players, but it's been the same amount of money pretty much every time.
Every time, and 33% of their income, correct?
Mm-hmm. And so until they can step that up, I don't think we're going to get anything. And it doesn't seem like they're negotiating in good faith, unfortunately. I would like to, be surprised by that, but I don't have my hopes up right now, and it sucks because this is a moment where baseball can kind of lead the way back and capture everyone's attention.
It's the only sport on, dude.
Mm-hmm. They got that ESPN 30 for 30 coming out about McGuire and Sosa and how that recaptured everyone's interest in baseball. People have become disinterested. And you've got a moment right now where you've got all these good players, you've got all these good teams. Mookie Betts just got traded to the Dodgers, for God's sake. And, you're threatening to cancel the season over cash flows, and they won't even open the books. It's frustrating. It's frustrating as a fan, and it's frustrating as someone who just wants to see baseball being played again.
Especially since I'm not sure if you heard, according to the owner of the Cardinals, baseball doesn't really create that much revenue. So that's I'm not sure if you heard that.
Yeah,
I did see that this morning, and I'm going to call BS.
Yeah,
he can sell the team if that's not true. He's free to sell the team. I'll take it over. No payment needed. I'll take it. It's fine.
Pro bono.
Yeah.
The most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
I'm sure the Cardinals are valued at somewhere around $1 billion.
I think they were top 5 valued teams, I think. Not top 5, but it wasn't like they weren't like bottom, like they weren't like Rays or anything like that. I saw something. I didn't do too much digging because I was hanging out with my niece, but I saw something like they were like 7 or 8 or something like that of highest revenue baseball teams. So it's like, bro, who are you trying to fool here?
Yeah, I don't know who they're trying to convince that baseball is a money-making procedure. The Royals, the Kansas City Royals just sold for $1 billion. If that doesn't tell you this current state of baseball, I don't know what will.
Jeez. Yeah, I saw a tweet this morning, and someone said, soon we're going to be arguing whether a 24 game schedule is worth it. And I mean,
yeah, they're
it's
trying to
just
do
so
eight.
it's
They're
just
trying
so
to do 8
disheartening.
teams from each league, dude. That's like their new postseason thing. More than half of the teams are going to go to the playoffs. That's a freaking joke.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Baseball's playoffs are already much more of a crapshoot than all the other sports. And then when you add in the possibility of an under 500 team taking down a Dodgers or a Yankees in a 3 or 5 game series, is that really what you want?
No.
Yeah, no. It's just,
I'll take no for 300, Alex.
yeah, it just seems like they're, like hockey's plan on coming back and starting the playoffs. Hockey is just such a different sport with how the playoffs structured anyways. So a team under 500, that's fine. They're not going to go anywhere, and everyone knows it. So that's fine. But baseball, yeah, that would be...
Any team can get hot in baseball.
Yeah, exactly. That would be the worst idea ever.
Well, we thank you so much for coming on, man, and giving us your time. And now to the moment you guys have all been waiting for. We're going to get going on our Ultimate Playoff starting rotations.
Ultimate Playoff Team.
Hey, what's going on? This is Tyler Beatty with the San Francisco Giants, and you're here listening to Benches Cleared podcast with Jesse Gutierrez and Tyler Coe. Go Giants, beat LA.
Ultimate Playoff teams, we've been asking you guys for the past couple weeks to make your Ultimate Playoff roster. This is for both teams in the California era. Longevity is not in the question. You can base your argument solely on 1 year. It just has to be a year, obviously, played on each team. Doesn't matter if the team if the guy has previously played on the team, you have to use the years he's played on the team. So without further ado, let's get started on the rotations.
So for the Dodgers rotation over the last week, we were able to get 5 starters. So in order, this is who you guys chose. This would be your 1 to 5. At number 1, we have Sandy Koufax. I don't think there's really any argument to be made that he's not the ace of that staff. Number 2, Clayton Kershaw. Again, I think number 2, that's where he slots in. I don't disagree with that. 3 through 5, I think you can make some arguments. We have Fernando Valenzuela at number 3. We have Oral Hershiser at number 4. And then we have Don Drysdale at number 5. Don Drysdale is at number 5. I definitely think Don Drysdale would slot in at 3 for me personally. And then on the last, ever since probably the second question, the second poll that we put out, Don Sutton's been on there, and Don Sutton wasn't able to crack your guys' lineup, which
None of it.
I don't necessarily agree with. I think I would slot Don Sutton in there over maybe Fernando.
So we got a disagreement here. Really? Really?
We do
Mania, huh?
We do have a disagreement here. I don't know if I would slot him in for Fernando or Hershiser. I think it could be a toss-up, but I definitely think Don Sutton deserves to be in there. Okay. And then Fernando and Oral, I mean, either one of them is going to be your number 5 guy. I'll take either one. It doesn't matter to me. I'll take either one. And there was some talk about, certain players not being in the mix, specifically Walker Buehler. Someone did point that out. And yes, we did say longevity does not matter, but the kid's been in the show for 2 years? I'm not gonna slot him in against Don Drysdale. I just don't back that. So that's why Walker Buehler was never mentioned. Yeah, we're talking a span of 70 years, almost 60 years. I'm not gonna put him.
You can make your arguments for it, but at the same time, in the back of your head, you still know he's only been there for a couple of years. So
yeah.
You got to be smarter than that, kids. You got to be better than that.
It's time to grow up.
Grow up, Peter Pan. Count Chocula.
Yeah.
It's 2020. It's time to grow up.
And now we slot over for the Giants rotation. You guys went Mad Bum at the 1 slot, Lincecum, Juan Marichal, Matt Cain, and lastly, Gaylord Perry.
Your name's Gay Falker. I'm sorry. It's not a normal name,
I don't think we've gotten too much of a brushback. A couple people, Tony C, TCS, SF Giants fan, wanted, Schmidt in there because he had that monster game against the Marlins. I could see where you're going, and got Devin Harrington said no Solomon Torres or Haymaker, and it's like Torres didn't have you got to do at least a little bit of your research. You know what I mean? Like Torres had the best year he had with the Giants. His ERA was over 4. So I don't know where you're getting that information from, my man Devin. But I don't get it.
Sounds like a top 5 guy over a span of 70 years.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I mean, that's incredible.
I don't understand it. Haymaker, yeah, that he had some really good years. But if you look at his playoff statistics, they're extremely terrible. Okay, like a 15 ERA, and it's not good. I would pick. I mean, it was between him and Trevecki, for that last slot, to be in the poll, which they wouldn't have made it anyways. One person I do want to point out is Ryan Vogelsong, that was in the poll for the last couple times, didn't make it, and I 100% agree. I think this everyone who made it deserved to be in it, and there's no one that I disagree with. But Ryan Vogelsong needs to be in the conversation, especially for 2012. He was the only starter that was consistently pitching at an ace level throughout that postseason. He had like a stupid 152 ERA, something like that. Kane was considered the ace at that time in 2012, and he was better than him. He was the only reason that they stayed in the playoffs in 2012. Kept the Reds really close at a 1-run game through most of the game. So he needed to be in the conversation, but I completely agree with the poll.
Dude, what about your boy Barry Zito? Or are we saving him for the biggest bust?
Okay, listen. If we had this podcast before 2011, I would be on your squad right now, okay? But after 2012, you will never hear me say anything bad about Barry Zito, a.k.a. the Rhino on The Masked Singer.
Catch me outside. How about that?
What does that mean?
What I just said.
Belting out freaking hits,
oh my God.
Okay? I watched that show, dude.
Oh my God.
I did, dude.
My
I got
worked
roped
on that show.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I got roped into watching one episode. I said, this is so dumb, the first episode. But then you're always like, I want to know who it is.
And then Barry Zito was on, and you're like, oh my God.
No, Barry Zito was not till season 3, so I was already sucked in. I was sucked in after the second or third episode, because it was like, I want to know who it is, and then you're stuck guessing and whatever. But you can't talk shit about Barry Zito, okay? Fuck you.
Okay.
All right. Anyone has anything bad to say about Barry Zito, they can say it too.
I mean, all I'm gonna say is, we like to pride ourselves on trash talking or talking shit, if you will. And I feel like we don't do enough of that, so I'm gonna go ahead and do something. Is every Giant fan that follows our Twitter just as big of a bandwagoner as you? Because Jason Schmidt should not be in this conversation at all.
Why?
Jason Schmidt sucks. And maybe this is like your Brian Wilson thing when he went to the Dodgers, how you just developed this hatred. When he came to the Dodgers, I hated him more than when he was on the Giants.
Because he was sucking for you.
Yes, because
he was good with the Giants, so that's why I put him in, you dick.
I know. But
that's why Brian Wilson's on our bullpen.
This is what talking shit is about, Jesse. Right?
Not making sense.
Jason Schmidt with his 87-mile-an-hour fastball that has no movement is not scary. And dudes were just hitting bombs, and Ned Colletti gave him a big contract. Still bitter about it.
Like I said before, it's because he was still a Giant. Mm-hmm. Okay? Some people never change. Some people are loyal, unlike other people I know. Okay?
Or like he was still a bitch.
He wouldn't still be a bitch. He would just be, for you, starting to be a bitch, because then that's when he would. You don't make any sense, Tyler. Okay?
Yeah, you're right. Anywho,
fucking love me some Jason Smith. You're the man. Okay,
we'll
suck
see.
On that team.
Yeah, we'll see when there's no baseball season. Then we'll have to cut and go back to me in March being like, there will be no baseball season. And then I feel like a dunce hat in the corner.
My hope is kind of shot right now. I'm not gonna lie. I feel not good.
Dumb bitch.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. I mean, there is that Manfred can implement a 50 game season, like where he doesn't have to get approved by anyone, I think is the talk. But I think there's going to be mass players being like, dude, F you, I'm not showing up, dude.
Yeah, especially with people like Trevor Bauer, who will voice their opinion on such a platform, and other players are starting to be as vocal. There's no way they're going to get away doing that shit. No way. So they have to bend to the Players Association. That's just what has to happen.
Yeah, they have to bend because it's not like it's. And I understand you usually on a mediation you have to find middle ground. I get it, but the players want something that's very reasonable. You know, it's like sometimes someone does have to come, 100, like, hitch 90-10. Maybe they just have to go 90-10.
Yeah.
Maybe they should tell something like, hey, the whole 8 teams for each league making to the postseason, you can suck a dick. Like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
What kind of dumb shit is that?
Then
You're really devaluing. The thing is I don't support the idea that this is a lost season, so whoever wins the World Series, it's not a real World Series. But at the same time, if you do some dumb shit like 8 teams a league get into the postseason, it's going to be hard to argue that. You're going to make it pretty hard for me.
Right. And the team that eventually gets the World Series will have won more series than the typical postseason, but it's just devaluing the season itself.
Yeah.
Because if you can go under 500 and make the playoffs, what's the fucking point?
Exactly.
This isn't basketball.
No.
Same
thing about hockey. Don't they do the same thing? They have like 16 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, but hockey's so much more competitive. Look at the Kings. When the Kings won the Stanley Cup in 2012, they were an 8 seed. And they won the Stanley Cup. Has that ever happened in basketball? No.
Yeah.
At least I don't think so. So don't quote me on that. But
he said no. Don't look up any facts, please, to make me feel stupid. Just accept what I say.
But with baseball, like we talked about earlier in our interview, I mean, shit. If you're a team that's under 500, but you have a decent 3-man rotation, who the hell knows what happens in a 3-game series if that's what they're going to do for the first round? I mean, it's stupid. Even if they're giving the higher seeded teams a bye, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, because any team can get hot.
Yeah.
I mean, just in a anything can. I mean, even in a 5 and 7 game series, anything can happen, but it's just less likely. A 3-game, a 1-game playoff, like and I get that with the wild card game. That makes sense because those teams technically shouldn't even be there, So like it's kind of like a little bit of a disadvantage. You lose your ace, and you have the chance to get knocked off for 1 game. So I understand it, but to do that to the entire league.
And this is after we're already potentially cutting 100 games for the season. So imagine if the Detroit Tigers somehow stick around and make the playoffs in this 16-team format. I mean, it's just a terrible idea.
Yeah. What about there's not going to be a trade deadline or anything. Hopefully not. So
no. Well, I saw something the other day. It was like, could we still get an All-Star game? And it's like, what's the point?
No.
And the All-Star game is more about fanfare anyways. And as a Dodger fan who's waited so long for this, I would be so mad if they're like, yeah, we're going to do it with no fans and then just move on next year.
I waited too, bro. I live out here too, so I would be going.
Yeah.
I'm just as disappointed as you are.
I was going to say, I remember talking last year, before the season was over last year, we were like, I'm already saving money for the home run derby, for the All-Star game, for tickets.
Yep.
And now it's all for naught. Thank you guys for watching. This episode was brought to you by Renovation Candle Company. Head on over to renovationcandlecompany.com and you can get 20% off your first order when you use the promo code BENCHES at checkout. Go ahead and check it out.
Yeah, benches. It's not going to be here because I'm not really savvy with that, but you know how to spell the word benches. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to be doing some giveaways in the next couple weeks. So make sure to be following our Twitter and our Instagram. Twitter is at Benches Cleared P and Instagram is Benches Cleared Podcast. Make sure to give us a subscribe to this podcast and leave a review to help us grow. And thank you guys, and we'll see you guys next time.